Welcome back. You're watching the Power Breakfast Show. Now, last week, Foreign Affairs Cabinet Secretary Amina Mohammed announced that the Kakuma and Dadaab refugee camps would be shut down for a variety of reasons, one of them being that it poses as a security threat to the country. Now, that announcement received sharp criticism from those who are for it and against it. And this morning we really want to have that conversation to understand what exactly this means for Kenya. And in studio we are joined by Patricia Nyaundi. She's the CEO of KNCHR, Andrew Minor, a foreign policy analyst, and Eunice Donga, Executive Director, Refugees Consortium of Kenya. And we want you to be part and parcel of this conversation. So 22422 is the SMS line, or you can get us on Twitter. The hashtag is Power Breakfast. For now, I hand you to Mr. Njao to start the interview. Mr. Njao.
Thank you, Perigo. I think the government is particularly concerned with Dadaab, not Kakuma, as of now. They're saying they're going to spare Kakuma as of now, but Dadaab must go. Maybe Mr. Maina, you can tell us the government perspective. What do you understand it to be?
I cannot purport to speak on behalf of the government.
No, you are not from, but your understanding of it as an analyst.
My understanding of the situation in Dadaab is this thing is not, they have not been saying it just yesterday. They have been saying it over and over again. And they have been pointing towards certain issues within Dadaab, causing insecurity and so on and so forth. However, from a very objective perspective, the government has been given 3 opportunities, actually more than 3 opportunities, to present proof of insecurity in the camps. I think the latest one was when we challenged the Security Amendment Act, the one that passed in 2014, and in that act they had included a line that would limit the number of refugees to 150,000. And the reason for that was because of insecurity within the country. But when the matter went to court, I think the Honorable Attorney General was unable to prove that indeed that such a move, that there was such an insecurity, the insecurity situation was such of great magnitude, such that to limit the number of refugees at 150,000. So it is a statement that has always been there, but it is a statement that has yet to be objectively verified. Then the other thing is, if you look at the Act and also international conventions that are being mentioned, there are particular sections on Article 33 of the 1951 Convention on Refugees that allows states on matters of national security to remove individuals, not mass groups, individuals. And this has to go through a due process, which means that they have to go to court, show that this individual is a threat to national security, and only then does the law allow them to allow this person to move to another country, a third country where they would feel secure, while also promoting national security within the country.
You talk about individuals and not mass. That area, Dadaab, is it able to accommodate that number?
Well, initially when it was they started,
600,000 people.
Yes, initially when it was started, and I think we need to correct that figure.
Yes.
600,000 people do not reside in the Dadaab camp. Dadaab has, well, a little over 400,000. The 600 figure is the total number of registered refugees in the Republic of Kenya, and it includes a certain figure from Kakuma refugee camp. Having said that, yes, initially when the camp was established, it wasn't for such a high number. But over time, a lot, with instability within the region, Somali, Ethiopia, Eritrea, a lot of people came in, and that was where they were housed. Perhaps they would have looked at it in a different way in terms of planning, but well, that was not necessarily a main objective or a main priority as at that time. But still, Kenya more or less tried to, as much as possible, to maintain its international obligation with housing those people there.
Eunice Donga, maybe we should start by telling us the Refugee Consortium of Kenya. What do you do?
Thank you. Refugee Consortium of Kenya is a national NGO tasked with objective of providing protection support to refugees in form of legal aid and advocacy work. Our aim is to see that, especially when refugees and asylum seekers come to Kenya, most of the times, because of the stakeholders sometimes not understanding the process, they are not able to acquire documentation on time, and because of that, you find that many of them will be arrested and charged with illegal presence in Kenya. I want to reiterate that asylum seeking is not adversarial, and it should be government should be able to allow asylum seekers to get into the country. Asylum seekers are those people who have run away from their own countries and seeking protection in the country of asylum, now like Kenya. So when they come in here, they should not be charged with immigration laws, because they are not like any other foreigners. So most of the times you find that such asylum seekers are charged with immigration laws, and we come in place now to create capacity, but also to help the various stakeholders, let's say like the police, to understand that asylum seekers then go through a different process, and then we are able to link them up with the Department of Refugee Affairs that has now been disbanded, and also with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. We also try to see that the legal policy frameworks within the country are in line with the international obligations of Kenya government, and so we do a lot of advocacy work allowed ensuring that we have policies, we have guidelines, and we have also laws that conform with our international obligations as a country. We also build capacity of the refugees themselves to understand that while they are in this country, they are bound by the national laws of this country. So they understand their obligations, and they also understand their rights.
So are you in Kakuma, or
We have offices. Our headquarters is in Nairobi, but we have an office in Kakuma. We have another field office in Dadaab, and we also have another field office in Garissa. Garissa being a transit route to Nairobi, to the urban areas. And our services also extend to the host communities, that is Kenyans who live within or among the refugees. So whatever legal aid we give, for instance, let's say legal aid on gender-based violence, we also extend the same to the host communities, so that we create peaceful coexistence between the Kenyans and the refugees themselves.
Patricia, what is it that is your concern as the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights?
Yeah, the challenge that we are having is that the government has again stepped outside the law. We think that even when you're faced with a security situation, Article 59 of the Constitution is very clear that even in pursuit of security, the government must adhere to human rights principles. So our challenge is that by first of all, the blanket condemnation of refugees. Refugees, by definition, are people who have fled because of a fear of prosecution. So when the government statement is addressed to refugees, there is a concern there, because when you read the context and you read everything that the government is saying, it is clear that they are seeking to address criminal elements who may have infiltrated the refugee camps. So that failure to distinguish between criminal elements and refugees is a matter of concern. That is a matter of big concern. Then the second issue is that the government then has proceeded to completely demolish or disband an entire department without following the process of the law. What we needed to do is to look at the Refugee Act, under which the Director of Refugee Affairs is comprised, and then either repeal that statute or do something legal. But the concern is that if government itself makes a tradition of stepping outside of the law, then the message that they are sending is do what it takes, including breaking the law.
So what you're saying, the government has broken law?
Badly, extremely. It has
our own Kenyan law, international law,
even our constitution, because our constitution says that everyone is entitled to a fair trial. Everyone is entitled to access to justice. Now, when you say I am going to remove all refugees because they constitute a security risk, that constitutes to that amounts to just a blanket profiling of a class of people. So that in itself constitutes inhuman treatment, because if you look at the images of those camps, it is clear that the people in those camps are actually people who are suffering. I don't think anyone would choose to live in those kinds of places that those people are living. They have come to seek refuge within our borders because of a crisis within their country. It is really unfortunate that the government is now saying that these people who fled the comfort of their homes because they feared for their lives, they feared they would be persecuted because of their political, religious or other beliefs. What we are doing as a host country is condemning them, that they are responsible for our security situation. What we are saying is that it is possible that the government is able to track, as they are saying, cells within the refugee camps. And we are urging that the government should distinguish those two issues: addressing the insecurity situation and meeting its obligations with respect to refugees. The moment that the persons in responsibility are able to distinguish those two issues, then we will not embarrass ourselves as we have done now.
Is the refugee situation in Kenya, that those two camps, Kakuma and Dadaab, is it the responsibility of Kenya government?
There is an obligation that attaches under international law. So once these refugees come, we as a country can give them the physical space. But the reason that the United Nations High Commission for Refugee exists is that it is then able to channel international support.
But Kenya says they have been left. Kenya is complaining. It's an expensive affair. It has been given. It's like it's a national Kenyan problem. That's what they're saying.
Just to add to what Patricia is saying, the host country now, like Kenya, gives protection to refugees on behalf of the international community, because protecting refugees is an international mandate, and that is why other actors, including NGOs, international NGOs, the UNHCR, are there to support or to complement the work of government, but also because it is the responsibility of the government to accept who comes in its own country, including refugees. Then it is their responsibility now to determine like who are the genuine refugees who come into this country, and it is their responsibility not to allow bad elements to get into the country from the onset. And in that case, then even saying that bad elements have infiltrated the camps, it also means that there is a failure on the part of government to determine who is coming in, the genuine refugees and those that the bad elements or the insecurity elements. Having said that, like I said, it's a shared burden with the international community, and Kenya has all the reasons to ask for this support, but not to send the refugees away. Like Patricia has said, you will look at the camps and you'll be shattered by their suffering. Most of the people in the camps are women and children and youth. over 56%, I believe, from women, youth and children. And these are people who are very, very vulnerable. If such a move was to take place, many of them would suffer a lot of jeopardy. Many of them will be exposed to more risks. And at the same time...
The government says no. The government says Somalia is now stable. That from the time Saint Barre was overthrown when they started coming here, up to now we have a system, we have elections in Somalia. It's a stable country, and there is a normalcy there. So these people have to go home. But me and you know it is different, and even for some of the returnees who have gone back home, they have a different story. And I want to reiterate some of the principles of return or voluntary repatriation. First, it must be voluntary in nature, because Mr. Mutegi, security is a personal issue. While it could be collective, it's also very personal. The way I perceive my security is very different from the way you perceive it. So according to the international law, the 1951 convention and other conventions, refugees are supposed to return home in conditions of security and dignity. But and also the process must be voluntary in nature. Where they are going, it must be a place where they would feel secure, they would be at peace, and they would be feel that they are dignified as human beings. And we know that for sure. Well, we appreciate that Kenya has done a lot to secure Somalia, and we are not refusing that. We know that it is not completely safe for all those refugees to go back home. So we are saying that we are urging our government that we know that over the many years that they have hosted refugees, they have done a very credible job. They have stood out as a best practice in the region. Why do they want now to go back and now receive the gains that they have done over the years? Kenya has seen what is happening in Europe. The Syrian refugees and those from Eritrea. They are having serious problems. The country is blocking. They don't come. And when they are there, they are mistreated. In fact, in Australia, there's a serious matter there about the treatment of refugees by the Australian government. Why should Kenya be any different? Maybe Mr. Maina.
I think from an international perspective, a bad example is a bad example. In those countries where they, like Australia as you've mentioned, where they outsource, essentially what they do, they outsource and they put refugees in Papua New Guinea just across the...
Which is in the very terrible condition.
Of course,
the Europeans are doing the Turkey. We don't want them Turkey taking them.
Now, those are two separate issues, and I will address them separately. With the Australian situation, I think the High Court in Papua New Guinea has declared that unconstitutional, and has asked the Australian government to find a way of ensuring that the human rights of these individuals are actually protected. If you look at the international, well, of course, politics and law more or less don't necessarily go hand in hand. And that one has also played out in the domestic arena. But that being said, it is still a bad example. If you look at Europe, as you've mentioned, the European Union, even before the blocking the borders, Germany is praised as being one of the most welcoming societies, and I think they took in about 1 million of these refugees. And if you look at what happened thereafter, I think
because Europe is, Germany is able, the economy can sustain them. Greece can't. You go to Greece, there's serious domestic problem of money. So if you bring them refugees there, it is adding a problem to a problem.
Well, I would differ, a bit. If you talk to international migration specialists, they will tell you, even in terms of global migration, forced migration will take about 10–20%. The other percent is economic movement, and they are all moving towards Europe. Why? Because some of these jobs and opportunities are there. Now, if you come to the Kenyan perspective, if we try and look at refugees rather than a problem as a solution. I think a while ago it was highlighted in one of the media stations that a lot of refugees have been involved in business and have been at the forefront in providing solutions to some of our problems. We have an unemployment rate of about 40% in this country, and they do contribute to that because they hire Kenyans to work in some of this business. So I think for me, as I look at it, it's a matter of perception. You may look at it as a burden, you know, in how much you give and how much has been given to them, but if the situation or the environment in which they are put in, I think as Patricia has mentioned, if you look at Dadaab, I don't think anyone would leave their home country and come and live in some of the conditions that are there. But people are actually struggling, trying to make a living. And the way we view refugees, most of the times we view them as, you know, these poor individuals who just come to receive handouts, which is not necessarily the case. Some of these people are businessmen where they came from. They were, you know, directors of huge companies. They were lawyers, architects, and so on and so forth. Right. So if there is a way that we can address this through policy to ensure that one, as you do what you call the refugee status determination, you ensure that the individuals who are coming into the country do not have these security alarming features, such as being involved in armed conflict or any criminal activity, and ensure that whoever is in the country is given an opportunity to also thrive. We could be using these refugees or having these refugees as a solution to some of the economic problems that we are talking about at the moment. I think that is where we need to you know, examine the focus. Yeah.
All of you do not see as if the government has a point.
You see,
is the government all of a sudden become mad? Because so many refugees have been here. Why is it now that the government says no, they must go?
I think the point there, it's not now that the government has said that Dadaab is a security.
They have given a deadline.
Yes, they've given a deadline, and they've given. I mean, this sort of talk has been there since the 90s. If you look at some of the pronouncements of the former president, Daniel Arap Moi, he also made the same comments, and they have been saying it since that time up until now. Now, there are two things. One thing that Patricia has mentioned, blanket condemnation is not right, essentially. You are putting people who would otherwise be being at risk and labeling them as criminals. Second point, if at all there is intelligence, and I'm sure the intelligence community know who particularly is involved in what, these people should be presented in court, they should be charged, and due process should take its course. By really coming out and saying, okay, now this entire place, because of few bad elements, just like in a classroom, you would punish the entire class because one or two people are bad. I think that may cause further problems even to the security of the nation than may solve issues in the long run.
What do you say about the government complaint of being a burden? That you are saying that they contribute to the economy, but the government thinks they are burden. That's why they say they close the Department of Immigration. Because they even give the figures how much it costs to run that department. So they said, why would we don't need the department?
Actually, then therein lies the problem, that the government has taken the most extreme measure that then does not resolve the issue. The department existed so as to process the very refugees that we now want to repatriate. So what we are saying, the very mechanism that existed that would do this for the government has been thrown out of the window. These are the people who have the expertise, they have the institutional background, they have the structures that would have progressively worked towards this repatriation program. You, just by the stroke of a pen, very casually, through a statement, do away with the department. I think that should make us sit upright and say, how are we dealing with these issues? I don't think it's an issue that we can trivialize. I think, Mutegi, we are all aware that one of the headaches we face as a country is corruption. And we want to ask ourselves, is that when you do this to vulnerable groups, what is the likely outcome? What is the likely outcome? I am sure right now there are people who are disappearing under the radar. What are these people going to be up to? Do we have the capacity to manage the problem that we have now created? So I think these are some of the conversations that must be had. But the biggest issue from a human rights perspective is that there must be a reason that we create laws. And it is completely unacceptable that it is the government that is in breach of its own laws. I think the moment that a government abdicates its responsibilities. And even without stepping outside of our borders, then of what use is the Constitution? Yes, when the Constitution says when you are pursuing security, Article 59, you must do so respecting human rights. I am a refugee because of an individual assessment. If, as Eunice has said, when I walked into the borders of Kenya, you found that I had a legitimate reason to leave Somalia or whatever other country, I think the moment that you want to consider my return, you must give it again individual attention. It is not possible for you, it is not acceptable, let me say, to admit me as a refugee based on an individual assessment and then eject me based on communal assessment. I think, and we have said this before as a commission, it is wrong to profile terrorists as Muslims of Somali origin. It is even dangerous. And we saw this during Operation Usalama Watch, that Kenyans were actually ferried into Somalia. Okay? For the simple reason that they were of Somali origin and they were Muslim. So I think it is wrong, it is irresponsible for the government to say that our problem is in Dadaab. We know that Dadaab is hosting predominantly refugees of Somali origin. The strong message that the government is sending that is wrong is that we think that the problem looks Somalish. During Operation Usalama Watch, we saw Kenyans stepping out of a matatu that was ferrying a Somali. I think this is dangerous. This is dangerous, and we must stop this conversation. If we have a problem in our camps, let the government say, and no one will stop them, that they are moving into the camps to deal with criminal elements. Those are two separate issues. Actually, the problem that we have is that there's a conflation of two separate issues. One is the financial burden. I think, and the international community has spoken up. I saw the High Commissioner for Refugees urging the government to reconsider its position. I think the message in that is that the international community will step up in terms of the support that it is giving the government. So that issue is separate from the security issue. I think the problem is that we are being forced to merge these two issues. They are separate. We must treat them separately, address the issue of the financial burden, and again, that really, the fault does not lie with the refugees. If you look at the issue as one of the financial government, it is not the wish of the refugees to burden us.
Okay.
The issue of insecurity, I don't think you should punish 400,000 people for the acts of people whom we are saying we are aware of.
There was an tripartite agreement between Kenyan government and Somalia and the KNCHR.
Yes.
What has come of it?
Well, it's still in force. It's supposed to end, I think, in October this year, or November this year.
Yes.
And in that tripartite agreement, what was to happen was that, Somali refugees were to be voluntarily repatriated back to their country of origin.
A number have gone.
A number have gone. A number have gone. In actual fact, the picking up was a bit slow, but since the beginning of the year, the numbers picked up as more and more people wished to return back to their country of origin. And I think we overemphasize this repatriation of Somali refugees as if it is the first one. In South Sudan, before 2011, when they were going back to vote for for separation from Sudan, there was a successful one, and that one was very peaceful. People went back voluntarily, and these things don't happen, just within a short span. I think one of the problems that we'll be tackling here is some of the numbers that the government may have wished to go home may have been higher than the reality on the ground. I think it is Ambassador Amina Mohammed, the CS for Foreign Affairs, who said that the uptake was a bit slow and that they have done absolutely nothing. I don't think nothing has been done. A lot of effort has gone into it, a lot of money has gone into it to see, even flights, by road, others just deciding to just go spontaneously, just wake up without any assistance and go. So the tripartite agreement is there, and it has been implemented, and people are actually, Somali refugees are actually going back to their country of origin voluntarily. I think just to add on to that, the greatest challenge now is that with the disbandment of DRA, this process is likely to be...
the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
No, it's not in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Internal security. So with that disbandment, it means this process has to be suspended, because it is this department that coordinates the process, because it's the Department of Government that is charged with the responsibility of managing the protection of refugees in Kenya. So when you disband such a department, and yet on the other hand you're saying the process is slow, what are we saying as a government? So I think that is something that the government needs to interrogate. And I want to add Mutegi, that with that disbandment of DLA, many things have happened, because operations now are suspended, and you can imagine in the lives of people, it is not by disbanding a department, it doesn't mean that we have ceased to exist. So there are refugees who are sick, who need to move from one place to the other to get medication, and for this process to happen in this country, the department provides what is called movement passes, because as you are aware, Kenya has the encampment policy, and for that reason refugees are supposed to live in designated areas according to that policy. So basically it means for a refugee to move even from point A to B, this department has to provide a movement pass. But now that is not being provided. In fact, I think it's on Monday we were informed that in Dadaab, a refugee died because he was not able to be flown to Nairobi for specialized treatment, because they cannot move without that movement. At the same time, this has created a lot of fear for the refugees, the uncertainty, and so you find that most of them don't know now what they should be doing. And that is a very dangerous perspective from a humanitarian perspective. What is the question they're asking is, what have we done to this government? We have lived in peace. I remember some, like 3 or 4 weeks ago, we were in Dadaab, and this refugee stood up and said, I can tell you with certainty that where I am coming from, we had food. I was able to eat fresh vegetables. I was doing what I do best to earn a living. But here I'm like in a prison. I am a professional, but I can't work. And even if I work in this country, I can only work as an incentive worker, because I can't access a work permit. I can only work as an incentive worker. And that means I will be paid the bare minimum, that you cannot even be taxed. And what are they doing with their the skills that they have come with? So the question is, when we suspend DLA, when we give blanket condemnation of all these refugees, does it mean Kenya does not have the law to deal with insecurity? According to the International Convention, refugees are bound by the national laws of the hosting countries. So Kenya has laws that deal with insecurity. It has laws that deal with criminals. Why can't they use the same laws to deal with any refugees who has flouted the law? And we have not been told about any numbers of refugees who have been involved in terrorism. I was listening yesterday to Honorable Kaiseri, yes, and he said that they are aware that it is refugees. The Westgate attack, yes, was conceived in Dadaab, but we have not been given any figures or facts to prove the same. It could be a security issue, maybe that is why they have not done that. But there is a way to deal with those who are involved. Just like if a Kenyan is involved in terrorism, and we have seen a few, there is a way that the law is used to address them or to deal with them. So why can't we do the same instead of condemning the whole population? I want to take you back to the reasons why people move from their own countries, and I think I can even go back to our post-election violence. Just recently, we had Kenyans from Uganda who are refugees in Uganda return home. It means that every one of us is a potential refugee. So when we people come to our country to seek that protection, and then we say we are tired now, we are unable to manage our security, so the easier way to do is you go back home. I think we are not being genuine, and I think we are not being fair to these refugees.
Is there any sanctions that Kenya can face from the international community if finally they beat the deadline and close the camp? What would happen? If that happened, because I think it will, what sanctions?
The bigger risk, the bigger risk is not the sanctions we face internally, but what will obviously happen is that these people will seep and disappear underground. So that is the bigger concern.
What if the government goes there and traps and ships them to the border?
Is that practically possible?
Our border is taller.
But
I don't know.
And I think if we discuss the issue seriously, is that this hardball approach, my concern has always been, when we take this hard stance approach, the people who suffer the heavy hand of government are the most vulnerable: the women, the children, the elderly.
That I know,
the genuine refugees. So I think it is wrong for us to do the right thing only because we want to be applauded internationally. Let's do the right thing because we care about the inherent dignity of a human being. So I think if it is possible, I think the thing that must be done is to reinstate the department. It is a core agency to handle the repatriation. We are saying we are doing away with the agency that has been handling refugee affairs, and we are setting up people who don't have the structures, who don't have the support. So what we are saying is that we are going to do this outside the structures that exist.
My question is, KNCHR and Foreign Affairs have said this, that our place must be closed, and it will be closed. So what will happen? What sanctions will take place?
In terms of sanctions, from an international perspective,
nothing. Is there anything?
It's not enough to say there's nothing that is going to happen. I'll take you back to last year, at a time like this, when the deputy president made a similar announcement to shut the camp within 3 months. And immediately thereafter, we had high-powered delegations coming to Kenya. Among them was the High Commissioner then, Mr. Antonio Guterres, and the Secretary of State of the US, and they came and pledged some amount of money. So I mean, to suggest that there's nothing that is going to happen internationally would be very wrong. But I think I want to go back to what Patricia has mentioned. If you look at does this action really improve the security of our republic? In 2007, the then Minister of Foreign Affairs, Honorable Tuju, declared the border between Kenya and Somalia closed. Now, if you've been there at the border, there is no wall or there is no fence, although now they're talking about building a wall. So by closure, it meant that they withdrew public officials from the border, which means what? No one is screening, no one is evaluating who is coming into the country, all right? So there is no official procedure of receiving these individuals from the border into the republic. I think what we are saying here, there should be a wider discussion of all stakeholders, from the humanitarian community, from the security community, so that we can all sit down around the table and come up with a very concrete solution that will not jeopardize the rights of individuals who may end up becoming threats to our national security. And we also ensure that whoever we have within this country do not endanger our national security. And that, we are saying, is entrenched in our law, both international and local law, through the Refugees Act. And there are systems that the government can use and is available to them to address this issue in a more humane and amicable way.
Can anybody go to court and stop this? Is it feasible?
Yeah, already plans are underway. I think if the government does not resign the decision, it will be necessary to move to court and have the judiciary make a pronouncement on what is possible under the law and what is not possible.
just wanted to say about the shame.
Yes, say something.
Okay, I just wanted to talk about, you were asking what would happen internationally if the government goes ahead and closes the camp. First, I would say there will be, it's shameful for us to do that. But I remember yesterday when Honorable Kaiseli was giving his statement, he mentioned that Kenya has suffered internationally because we are seen like our humanitarian law, or rather we are not doing well from the humanitarian perspective. I think this will be worse, because how do you return people to a place where they can face death, for instance? And then you're saying that we have a good standing in the community of international states. I think that is wrong. But like Patricia has said, yes, it's a process that can also be challenged through our court system. I think I want also to reiterate the three concerns that the government had. One was the insecurity. The other one is the international support, and the other one is environmental degradation. For sure, it is important that a government is able to provide security for its citizens, and it should be concerned when there is a challenge. But we are saying there is a process for dealing with that. The government, we are calling upon the government to receive this decision, but put in measures that can address the national security issues, including whether there are any threats in the dam. Let them put in measures that can deal with that. And I do believe, and I want to call upon the international community, that there will be people who can support in that process the police reforms and any other reforms that is necessary to ensure that we are able to put in policies and structures that can deal with our national security. Having said that, I think I would also call upon the international community to provide more support in terms of burden sharing for this problem, but not to return or forcibly return refugees to a place where they would face threats to their lives. So, and I believe if Kenya government just wanted that support, there is a process also of seeking that support from the international community without jeopardizing the lives of those who need protection most. And also with environmental degradation, like it has happened in all the other, in any other part of this country. You look at the flooding. It is still about environmental degradation. Can we put in systems that can deal with environmental degradation, not just in the dam, but in the whole country? But let's not use that as a means to throw away people or return people forcibly against our own obligations, against international obligations, and take them back to a place where they may face danger. I think that's unfortunate, and it should not be done by a country like Kenya.
And can somebody not feel that when they are arguing that is that if the refugees go, why will the organization be? You'll be
I do not think so, because our mandate goes beyond just. Our mandate is a human rights mandate, and it does not cease because refugees have gone back. And let me also remind you that by Somalis going back to the country, to their country, assuming they were all to go back, it doesn't mean that our region has become stable and that we are not going to expect any new refugees.
Thank you very much. I hope the people in the government who are hearing, they do realize that they are abrogating and breaking international and local laws, so that they should not do whatever they plan to do. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you.